Now, here in Kenya, the government's pushed forward the date for closing the world's largest refugee camp. Dadaab was set to be closed next year. Now it will be done by November. Dadaab houses more than 300,000 refugees, mostly from Somalia. The United Nations and the Somali government have both urged Kenya to reconsider, but Nairobi says terror attacks have been planned in Dadaab. There's no hard evidence yet of that, though. The announcement of the November closure came from Kenya's Interior Minister. Now, CCTV's Jen Keo joins me live in our Nairobi studio for more details on that story. So, Jen, just 5 months now to shut down, which is largely, of course, the largest refugee camp in the world. How exactly is the Kenyan government trying to do this or planning to do this?
Well, Penina, at the moment, this is basically the big question, how exactly Kenya intends to go about repatriating, sending back 350,000 people back to Somalia in just 5 months. But Kenya appears to have started or kick-started the process, if we can call it as such, because yesterday the task force that was formed by the government, immediately it made this announcement, actually presented its final report to the government of Kenya. And this was a task force that was supposed to draw up a timetable to come up with modalities, a plan, and the cost of this repatriation exercise. We still do not have the contents of this report yet. The minister is expected to give, Minister Joseph Nkaiseri is expected to give it to President Uhuru Kenyatta, plus the UNHCR, which is among the key people involved in this repatriation exercise. Kenya has, of course, said that it will be giving about $10 million to help in the relocation process. But at the moment, of course, there's still a lot of questions, because we do know that the Somali government has to be keenly involved in this exercise, plus the UNHCR. And of course, at this point, many people, Penina, will tell you, even if the government of Kenya goes on an overdrive, aggressive campaign to relocate these people, to send these people back home, it's simply not possible over the next 5 months, because for starters, the refugees need to be assured of their safety. They need perhaps even the basic services like health and education, plus they also need to be assured of a livelihood, how they're going to eke out a living, which we do know that is probably non-existent in many parts of Somalia. But we have the Kenyan government saying, listen, we've been in Somalia for the last 5 years, we've helped to liberate some of these areas, and it's about time that you actually go back home. And of course, this comes at an interesting time, because the tripartite agreement between Kenya, Somalia, and the UN comes to an end this year. Perhaps that's why the government of Kenya feels it's about time that they get to this aggressive campaign. And over the last 3 years, as you know, the process has been slow. We've only had about 14,000 people voluntarily going back home. And that's why Kenya is saying, you know what, it's about time we share this burden.
But it's not the first time the Kenyan government has threatened to do that. It's done that, but then backed down on that threat. So why now?
Certainly. In fact, last year, if you remember, especially after the Garissa University attacks, the government was firm, saying that it's about time we close this, we close Dadaab. Of course, they've said some of these, the attackers, particularly those in Westgate, some of them came through Dadaab, some of them were in these refugee camps. Of course, there's still no evidence about that. But many will tell you the government appears, it's somewhat different this time round, and maybe because of what the government has also done and put in place before it made this announcement. Penina, if you're not aware, early this year, the government actually managed to get the African Union Peace and Security Council to declare Dadaab as a refugee camp, as a security threat. It went ahead to revoke the prima facie refugee status of Somalis. Plus, thirdly, it actually closed down the DRA, the Department of Refugee Affairs. Immediately, it made this announcement that it was going to close Dadaab. And then we see this task force. It's never done that before. The task force that's supposed to draw up this timetable and a plan to actually send these people back home. Whether that will happen again remains the big question. So Kenya ultimately appears to be making a statement this time round. And of course, it said it's all about security. The government says it still feels it has an obligation to protect Kenyans. And so this time round, we do know that the UN Security Council was here last week, but the government still remained firm on its decision. The president said it's about time. And the government says that they feel the international community is not sharing in this burden. They feel neglected by the international community, especially when they compare whatever is happening in Kenya with what's happening in Europe with the migrant crisis. They feel that the wealthy nation appear to be partisan. They're not providing a level playing field, when we know that in Europe, even countries are they're closing their borders to some of these people. And that's why Kenya is saying that after 25 years, we feel that this time this thing has to come to an end. But again, we have to wait and see whether it will really happen.
Indeed, we have to. Jean, thanks very much for those insights. Jean Kale, live here with us in studio.